They were the heroes from the future, teenagers protecting the universe from those that would sow the seeds of chaos. Each had unique powers and abilities, and though they often had their differences, they came together to save the day as the Legion of Superheroes. Now, you can be a part of their adventures and learn the history of the future in the Legion Clubhouse.
This week on the Legion Clubhouse, Starfinger is dead! Dead, I tell you!
Legion of Superheroes Volume 3, Number 29. No Star Shall Shine. Published December 1986. Written by Paul Levitz with art by Greg LaRocque, Mike DeCarlo, and Arne Starr. Synopsis. A Legion villain is murdered by someone who wants to take his place.
Starfinger, the man with the stars for fingers. He will not linger. If you smell his finger...
Stop it. Stop it.
Little did we know that Starfinger is dead, yet, all along, what was the other villain that we saw not too long ago that we realized was, oh no, there is somebody else that is the real guy, the real bad guy?
I believe it was the Time Trapper.
Oh yeah, that's what it was, Time Trapper, yeah.
Yeah, because we saw the controller who we thought was the Time Trapper, but he was actually being manipulated. But
yeah.
This is a case where Hanscom, by the way, I've always thought that Starfinger is a really stupid name. And it's only
what year was Starfinger introduced?
65.
So
Starfinger goes all the way back to the Adventure Comics days. It might even be the George Papp days. But yeah.
But nothing to do with Goldfinger, a riff on Goldfinger?
Oh, almost certainly a riff on Goldfinger.
Okay.
What year did Goldfinger come
64.
out? 64, yeah, certainly. He probably has, a little sidekick named Random Task. That's not Goldfinger, but you know what I'm saying. But yes, this is not a case where it was secretly somebody behind him. It's literally a new Starfinger has come and murdered everything out of Dr. Hanscom to take over his name and be scary. And I'm just like, if you have these kind of resources, if you are a criminal genius, why in the world would you want to be called Starfinger?
Well, maybe we'll find that out in the next issue when we find out more about Starfinger. But I will say this. I'm not saying that he's a criminal mastermind, but he is big and he is orange. And he does say, if these casinos don't want to do what I want them to do, I'm going to destroy them all.
So he's Al Pacino.
No, I think he's like, I've only got the best. I've only got the best resorts. Only the best resorts for me.
I killed the previous Starfinger. Only the best Starfingers.
I've got the greatest Starfingers of all. Yeah.
The Dominion had nothing to do with me becoming Starfinger.
Yeah. So we get to follow this mystery of who is this new Starfinger. And apparently he has this giant criminal organization. And I swear to God, Matthew, if you look on the bottom of page 4 at that side profile, I'm not too far off in my assumption of who is the man under the shiny orange
the man
dome
with the shiny face. Well, here's the thing. I'm not necessarily saying that it can't be, because 1987, 88, when this came out.
Yeah.
I mean, that particular person did have a pretty good pop culture profile. I mean, in mid 86.
What year did this issue come out?
Mid 86. It would have been on
mid
sale
86.
August
Okay.
19th. Yeah.
Okay, because the art of the deal didn't come out until November of 87.
Right. But there was a thing. I remember him being on MTV.
Sure. Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. No. This guy was a name before the art of the deal came out. Because he was all over. He was all over the place, making deals and crashing casinos and doing other things. So a lot of this issue is Starfinger is wanting to take control of these resorts on Mars, and he's got these goons that are going to work for him, and they all wear the same Star brand on their arms.
Mm-hmm.
And
because that's secretive.
And if the resorts don't cave in, he's going to destroy them. And of course, the Legion show up and and intervene. And then the resort owner is like, what are you doing? This guy's going to tear me down. Don't you understand? And of course, Starfinger attacks, and everybody has to save the day with giant space lasers and everything. And that is kind of our big main story of introducing the new Starfinger, which, listen, I'm not saying that I've been saying for 6 months now or a year now that they are amping up the powers of their villains.
Mm-hmm.
But they are amping up the powers of their villains.
I will say this. I have been resisting you on occasion with this theory, but in this case, this is 100%. They are amping up Starfinger into a threat worthy of a modern Legion, because the old guy was just a bald dude who, put on his Mayor McCheese hat and hypnotized Lightning Lad rather. And Garth Rands is a good, fine human being. He's an American hero, but he is not the brightest bulb at the bottom of the barrel. So, that Starfinger did not carry menace. This guy, in his very first appearance, in the first 3 pages of this issue, is more menacing than Starfinger had ever been in the 20 years of his existence.
Oh, yeah. He kills not only the original Starfinger, but the guy that they sent to kill the original Starfinger, he also kills. And then,
who I think is a Kund, if he's big and thick and pink with a funny helmet.
Well,
I'm like, is this guy meant to be a Kund?
No, I think these are the same guys that are on Mars that are trying to terrorize the resort. I think it's of those same guys. And they don't call those guys Coons. I think these are somebody else's. I think these are those little muscle men erasers that we used to have in the 1980s.
Yes. The men from Muscle. That's what they're Kinnikuman figures.
Yes.
Yeah, but he just and there is a really, really good shot of him on page 3
of Starfinger,
where we see of Starfinger, where we see he has like the mono helmet, except his is filled with Kirby dots.
Yeah,
and you see the outline of his face, but his cape is shaped like a star.
Yeah, so when he goes, like when he does his powers on the Muscle Man, the cape flares out, and you can see that it's definitely a star on that.
Yeah.
So it
works. Really a cool visual. It's I don't always like LaRocque's costume designs as much as I like the ones that came under Lytle, but this one is top notch.
Yeah. It's interesting, and this is kind of one of those subtle drops that I like as for an ongoing simmering plot in the background where, they're like, hey, we could just use this laser and pierce through the Earth's polybag. And he's like, no, I have given my promise that I would not attack the Earth. And it's like, ooh, who has Starfinger made agreements with, which we will find out a little bit later on.
In the universe. Oh, who could it be?
I know. We'll find out more about that in a little bit. And let's see. I'm trying to think what else specifically Starfinger related. I mean, there's some good action sequences where they're trying to tear down this giant space laser beam. I guess the one thing that I'm curious about is Phantom Girl goes up and she follows the beam up into space by being immaterial. She gets up there and she's like, I'm going to turn material for just a second, smack into the side of this giant satellite and knock it out of its orbit so that it blows itself up in self-destruct. And I've got to be thinking, how fast is she going in order to do that? Because her mass and speed, that is what would knock it out. So she would have to be going an incredible amount of speed to knock this thing out of its orbit.
Well, you have to figure, according to Who's Who, Tinya weighs about 120 pounds. And looking at just the force perspective of it, the actual part that she kicks looks to be about 12 feet wide. So I don't know if she's kicking the whole thing out of orbit so much as she's messing up its orbit. You figure 120 pounds, flying at the speed of flight ring, presumably hitting at the speed of, woman in a trans suit that keeps her protected. I've never really thought about that. Do the polymer suits actually protect them from impact? Probably not.
I don't know, but she's got, I mean,
yeah,
if it isn't protecting her from impact, that's great because again, she is going incredibly fast to do that. And of course, Magnetic Kid gets to shine a little bit in this issue. All the Legion
gets a moment.
Yeah.
Where they're like, hey, these bad guys are coming in, and Polar Boy, somebody grabs him and goes, let's see you ice things up now. And he judo flips this guy twice his size. And he's like, who said Legionnaires only had superpowers? And I'm like, oh.
I'm not a huge
this is not
fan.
the weenie Polar Boy.
I'm not a huge fan of Polar Boy in these since his reintroduction with his new suit and everything. Since he's quote unquote gotten on the Legion team. He's very arrogant. He's very, do as I say, Magnetic Kid, and I will train you the right way. And I'm like, he seems to be taking a lot of credit for other people's work. And then you get the sense in this issue, which pays off in the next issue, where you're like, oh, this guy is politicking to be the next leader of the Legion.
And to some degree, I think that part of that irritation comes from, at least for me, seeing him be part of the the Pulsar Stargrave crazy goober guys who were all like, hey, we're so stupid that only Stone Boy can save the day. But you also have to remember, he has been actively doing stuff, not necessarily Legion membership, but he has been actively superheroing as long as the longest tenured Legionnaires at this point. He's been around about 10 minutes less than Phantom Girl, who right now is the most tenured active Legionnaire. Phantom Girl joined in the team's third appearance. And at this point, she's like, hey, I'm a veteran. I'm 26 years old. I've been kicking people in the head since I was 14. I think what they're trying to give us here is that even though Polar Boy hasn't actively been a Legionnaire, he has a background. He's been a hero of note as long as Ultra Boy and Phantom Girl and, Mon-El have.
Or even Atmos, which is where the second half of our story takes place, as there's been an Atmos sighting on Tellus's planet of Hyrule. And so they've all got to go to Hyrule to find out what's going on.
I would say it's a glimpse Atmos. But I do like the fact that completely by dint of saying which Legionnaires could exist in this weird underwater world, we get the weirdest little Legion quartet in the history of the team. And I'm just like, these guys should be the new Fantastic Four. I'm sorry. We got a teeny tiny guy in the tiny Starship Enterprise.
Yeah.
And then we have like the teenage Fishman. And then we have the guy who's made of some sort of weird antimatter. And then the girl with antennae who floats off the ground because she can't be bothered to walk. That is a great team. You got science, you got telekinesis, you got magic, you got God only knows whatever Quizlet is. This is a really remarkably powerful team. I like it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find it really interesting that the guy that's basically antimatter, and explodes on contact is going to a planet that is a lot of methane in the ocean. That just seems like a smart
liquid methane.
That just seems like a smart choice.
Liquid methane doesn't light up the same way that other forms of methane, or so I've heard.
Yeah,
are known to light. Is all I'm saying.
Let's see what else happens in this issue that of note. We see the return of flying platforms, which we haven't seen flying platforms in forever.
And we see the return of Wildfire being vaguely racist and inappropriate, which we haven't seen for 4 or 5 issues. I mean, he's just really awful to the Hycreans. He keeps talking about, your weird planet full of glork and fish people. And I'm like, he's right there, Wildfire.
I don't think Tellus cares. Well, or Wildfire may think that maybe Tellus is too stupid to understand, right? It's kind of like, it's kind of like, this happens to my wife sometimes, where people just assume that she doesn't speak English. And
yes.
And so they're just like, and where are you from? And it's like, she hears just fine. You don't have to yell. And she speaks, English just fine too.
She's like, Dodge City.
it feels like that. It feels like that same kind of attitude, right? That Wildfire does too.
It definitely is, and it's designed to remind us that Wildfire is the blowhard. He's the hothead. He's the team's resident jerk with a heart of antimatter. But
Mm-hmm.
in context of 1986, I remember thinking, wow, look how well these characters are rounded out. There's this guy who's always snarky, and there's this girl who's mean, and then there's this girl who's over here, and the guy who's super powerful but whines about it. But in, you know, down the line, 40 years, Wildfire's remarks are just flat out xenophobic.
Oh, yeah,
They
yeah,
are
yeah, yeah.
inappropriate.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
messed up.
yeah, yeah. It's not appropriate. Also, it turns out Relnick is also part of whatever is going on. Ambassador
Yes.
Relnick also seems to be under the sway of somebody who we may or may not find out who it is in an upcoming issue.
And Relnick has been a friend of the Legion since 1973.
I know, right? So that's the main story. The story was okay. There's a lot of action in here. I know we've seen the man behind the man gimmick done before in the case of the Starfinger, or as you said, with others. So that's kind of a little redone. But going back to amping up the characters, this seems very much in line with what's going on at DC Comics as we're going through the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and series are starting to be rebooted, and we're starting to see new origin stories of Lex Luthor, and we're starting to see new origin stories of Green Lanterns and all of this stuff, where everybody is getting the power creep setting in. So it makes sense that, hey, we can't have these 1950s mustache twirling, Van Dyke wearing villains menacing these teenagers. We have to take these young adults, which is the term that we're going to use in the 1980s. And we have to give these young adults powerful villains that they have to deal with. And so I'm okay with it, but I think there's only so many times. And again, if you're writing comics every month, I understand. And so I am giving this a pass, especially when you're doing it every month for years. You are going to retread on some of the old stories, or some of the old gimmicks, especially because somebody who's reading this in 1986 probably wasn't around in the 1950s or the 60s or 70s or, whenever to read any plot or story or similarity that could be done before. So, you've got that. Overall, it was not a bad issue. I rather enjoyed some of the little hidden twists that were in this issue.
I agree. I really liked seeing Magnetic Kid finally sort of step into his own.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciated the fact that, 3 of our 4 Legion Tyros, our newbies, have now been on the team for 15 issues. And I feel like this is an issue that sort of puts the punctuation on, these are the new kids and they're all, weird and awkward. Tellus is essentially the leader of his team. We're on his world. He's the guide. So we're seeing the world through his perspective. Polar Boy's taking a leadership role. Magnetic Kid takes out 4 foes who have his powers with nothing more than brains and smarts, and a reminder that my big brother taught me everything there is to know about magnetism.
Yeah.
That time that he nearly murdered 5 people after our mom caught fire.
Yeah. But also, I found it interesting that we see Cheetah, Giganta, and the female Black Cat making an appearance in this groovy party that's going on at the resort. I'm guessing it's probably a costume party. So that's fascinating.
No, that's actually how people look in the 31st century. They're just like, hey, I dress like the cheetah now. I'm from the cheetah planet.
If you enjoy the show, we would appreciate your support. You can find out more and become a Legion Clubhouse member at patreon.com/majorspoilers. Legion of Superheroes Volume 3, Number 30. Brainy's Lucky Day. Published January 1987. Written by Paul Levitz with art by Greg LaRocque, Mike DeCarlo, and Arne Starr. Synopsis. Brainiac 5 finally has a good day, but every day has to end.
So I said that it looked like something weird was going on, and all these people seemed to be under the thrall of something or somebody else. And in issue 30, we're going to find out who. But while Brainiac is having a lucky day, you've got to realize that there's two sides to that coin, or however that goes.
Well, yeah, every dreidel spins in all directions, I believe.
It should be one of those things that, if we were injecting everybody's religion, although we have seen religion in this quite a bit, I would bet money that Brainiac would be Catholic, because it's like, oh no, something good has happened. That means something bad's about to happen to balance it all out.
That's true.
Yeah, that's some Catholic guilt right there. But he goes
Karma is a cat.
He goes to Supergirl. I mean, Censor Girl, and apologizes for his weirdness that he was doing when he was going through all of his confusing stalkery times, and so that's nice. But also, Censor Girl looks really weird in that first page. It's like she has been hitting the performance enhancing drugs really, really hard.
I think that it's meant to be big 80s shoulder pads, but it does look like she has been just bulking up, because she does. The Censor Girl costume has like a big puffed sleeve, but also, this is Greg LaRocque doing a design that somebody else came up with, so it's hard to say. Maybe part of Projector's thing of I'm going to give this all up is I'm going to lift like I'm in prison.
Maybe that's like what it is.
Ilsa's She-Wolf of the SS, but something
X
else.
She hasn't
always been this buff, but she hasn't been this snooty before. I mean, we know she's nobility, and she's had moments of I am Projector of Arando, doop-de-doop-de-doop.
Yeah.
But she literally says to Brainiac, you are of old and noble lineage. And I'm like, of mass murderers.
Yeah.
And then she's like, I have forgiven you. And then she crunches his hand and goes, but once is all you get. And I'm like, dude, that is cold. This is one of your best friends for 20 years. I don't know, man. It feels like we're seeing an entirely different Projector here. And I'm fine with that. But I'm also like, is this all just because she saw her husband? Like,
I mean,
I don't know.
There's a lot of things that could happen if you saw a loved one die in front of your eyes, and then had to lead your planet like nothing happened. Here's what I find really
movie in 1986 had that same plot.
Yeah, here's what I find really, really interesting. In the previous issue, we have Telos, Phantom Girl. Telos. Who went with Telos? Wildfire and White Witch.
Wildfire, Quizlet.
Quizlet. Yeah.
White Witch.
They all get shunted off to their own little adventure trying to track down Atmos. And they turn out, oh no, this wasn't, he's not really here. We just had an inkling. It's like, you're going to bring a tracker. Maybe you should have brought Dawnstar if she could have handled the immense pressures of the underwater world. I find that interesting. Right. And then in this issue, we find that Mon-El, Ultra Boy, Block, and is there anybody else? I think it's just those three.
I think it's just, the three most physically powerful Legionnaires.
Yeah, the three biggest, toughest Legionnaires are going with Relnick to go to the Dominator world, right?
By Relnick's request.
Yeah, and so it's like, I like how they are. This is like a Darkseid move, right? Or a Thanos move, if Thanos was in this world, where you're just subtly just moving all the players around the board and getting them in a position so that when you have to go to Niagara Falls, you can get a little mini, origin story retelling going on here. But it's really interesting that we are getting. It's just really interesting that we get all of these players being shuffled around, so that I'm not saying that the weakest players are left behind, but the big powerhouses are really out of the picture at this point. White Witch, Telos, Quizlet. I would say that those are all powerhouses in themselves. A magic user, a telepath, and Quizlet just exploding things on contact. And then you've got the Strongs on another planet. And that leaves you with Lightning Lass, Wildfire, who looks, not Wildfire, Timberwolf, who looks like Clint Eastwood more and more in the pages of this. Brainiac 5. and Colossal Boy.
Which is interesting because it does force the team to, you have to think about what are you going to do. Nobody invulnerable is here.
Mm-hmm.
None of our qualified instructors are here. So what are we going to do? Brainiac shields himself with his invincible force shield and walks into the malfunctioning Niagara Falls power generator with, Lightning Lass, who's like, oh, what a lovely walk in the park. It's a really cute moment, and he calls it out. She's like, it was smart of you to bring me. And he's like, well, yeah, genius is in my name, stupid.
Yeah.
But it's neat because, you didn't have a Superboy to just wail in and smash everything. They have to be a little bit more judicious. And you get to have moments with Lightning Lass showing off that she's not invulnerable, but she is a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And she will literally be a powerhouse, and she will mess you up, especially if you bring those weird space elephants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She got bitten by a space elephant once, and she's still mad about it.
Yeah. And then we get the big reveal, of course. We've kind of known that Universo is the one controlling. He's the one controlling the vice president and the president, and presumably he is the vice president under a different guise. And we're like, oh no, it's been Universo all along. I was just talking about a mustache twirling Van Dyke wearing bald headed Jin all the way down to his puffy pants. That he's been a bad guy, and Relnick is a bad guy. And we've discovered some other people who may be under the thrall of Universo, including, and I think this is the best, this is where they should have ended the issue, but they didn't. They kept pushing it further and further and further. They should have ended the issue with Tellus revealing that he has also been mind-controlled by Universo.
That's not Tellus. That's Tellus's friend Logos.
Oh, okay. Controlled. Well, you can't tell them apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
way to go, fish guy.
That is the thing. But yeah, you see Telos is that Mike Waringo book from 94. But Telos and the Legionnaires are in the background, and then you see his friend Logos swimming away going,
okay, because the way it reads, it's like, oh, okay. I guess I was just reading it and not paying attention to all the other floating fishmen around this planet to go, oh, okay. Because that would have been the perfect thing is for Tellus to also be under the sway of Universo.
Yeah, and that would have been dangerous because Tellus is a projecting telepath. And
right? And then, like I hinted at last issue, Polar Boy is indeed saying, hey, I want to run for university president of our little fan club. And Brainiac's like, what? How can this be? And Element Lad is like, what? How can this be? I'm going to turn him into a little molecule. And he does. And we don't have to worry about Polar Boy ever again.
Element Led is like, you'd make a great leader. Or maybe not. But, you did skip over the most important part. And I feel that it's important that we have to point out that Brainiac goes out to the clubs with Sunboy.
And Dawnstar.
Yes. Brainiac and Dawnstar. So the nerd and the crunchy granola hippie girl go out with Mr. Lothario to the club. And it's an exclusive club because you can clearly see right there on page 23, they're not letting in Miss Piggy and Kermit the Frog.
Oh, I was thinking that was Fish Police, but yeah, Kermit the Frog makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, Kermit, and you see that's Piggy.
And
Kermit
that's
and Piggy
Gray Hulk. Yeah.
That is
nope, that's Gray Hulk. Sorry. Go and look at what was Gray Hulk's name?
Kirby.
What was his name?
Joe Fixit.
Yeah, Joe Fixit. That's who that is.
Joe Fixit didn't have that big brow.
That's who they're referencing. Just like that doesn't look like Kermit the Frog or Miss Piggy, but they are. So
they are both referencing Jack Kirby with a cigar in his mouth, but still.
And then Brainiac, and this may be a little bit more foreshadowing, leaves the club because he's like, oh, too much flashing lights. That's bad for my brain powers. And he goes outside and he bumps into the doctor or the psychiatrist that has been treating him before, Dr. Chaser. And she's like, oh, I hope everything's going well with you. Maybe you can walk me home. And he's like, oh, yeah, everything's good with the world. And then the next day he's going into work and they're just like, did you not hear? Ron Vidar is dead. And he's like, what? No, not Ron Vidar is dead. What am I going to do now? Maybe go crazy.
I might go crazy. All work and no play make Brainiac a helper.
I like these two issues, quite honestly. I like that we get this intrigue and mystery, and there's not a point where anybody turns to the reader and says, "Did you figure it out?" There was a lot of fun in how they defeat the Korbal elephants.
Mm-hmm. The lightning beast, they let them drown.
Yeah, no, that's the funny thing, right? Is like, hey, let's go through this convoluted plot of grounding the lightning beasts of Korbal, and they're doing it in, of course, Niagara Falls with all the water. And then as these things knock themselves out because they're grounded, they just leave them in 1 inch of water, which is enough to make them drown. And so, they killed those animals.
There's a lot of like nice character beats here, but it doesn't feel like one of those issues that's just all housekeeping.
Yeah.
Because we do get a moment where Mon-El and Ultra Boy are about to take off, and Shadow Lass and Phantom Girl come out to kiss him goodbye and give him good luck, and that's sweet. There's a moment where either Brainiac is coming home and Lightning Lass and Shrinking Violet are going out very late together, or he's been out all night with Dr. Chassir.
No, he says good morning. He says good morning to them.
He's sneaking in doing the Brainiac walk of shame, and those two are going out on a date. And I'm just like, oh, subtle. Very subtle, Paul Levitz. We see what you are being subtle.
Yeah, and she also has, Lightning Lass also has the big shoulder pads of shame.
Yeah, but those are, if you look closely, that's not a costume. That's literally her street clothes. She's like, I'm going to dress up like the lightning fairy from Narnia. And Shrinking Violet's like, fine, I'm going to put on a leotard. It'll be great.
Yeah, no, I like these two issues. I thought they were pretty good.
Yeah, and the end, the beginning of More Madness, or the end of the Crazy Crazies, Brainiac is just devastated. And I will say this, when it comes to this team, I do appreciate what LaRocque and DeCarlo can do, but I don't always think of the subtler emotions when I think LaRocque and DeCarlo. But that last panel of Brainiac with the tear coming down his face, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's well done. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're not looking at like crazy Archie stuff with big rubbery heads.
Oh, we will. And then it will be glorious. That wraps it up for this installment of the Legion Clubhouse. Matthew, what did we learn this week?
We learned that if you need somebody to play bad cop, Sunboy and Lightning Lass are remarkably good at it.
I think we also learned that Dream Girl gets the magnificent burn in this issue where she says, I'm not built for this work. And then the response is, no one ever thought you were.
And finally, and most importantly, we learned that Dream Girl knows how to operate Brainiac 5's equipment just by watching, as if she were smarter than she seems.
Yeah, that and other lies. We hope you enjoyed this week on the Legion Clubhouse. If you enjoyed this show and got some information out of it, how about you give us a little tip? Cost of a cup of coffee is all it takes. Just go over to patreon.com/major spoilers. And until next time, I'm nice, kid.
And I'm Dogmatic Lad.
The Legion Clubhouse is a production of Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC, and is produced by Steven Schleicher. Your hosts were Matthew Peterson and Steven Schleicher. You can follow Matthew at Mighty King Cobra and Steven at Major Spoilers. You can follow this podcast on Twitter at Legion Clubhouse. If you have questions or comments, send them to podcast@majorspoilers.com. I'm Jason Inman. Until next time, eat it, Grandpa.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.